Morning, my name is Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. This morning I'm here at Flash Industrial Painting, and I've finished these yesterday. If you watched that video, you saw that we got these all painted yesterday, and today we're going to load them on the truck of the person that's going to come get them, and then we're going to go outside and spend the rest of the day sandblasting on another big old winch truck. First, we'll see how these turned out. Nice and shiny. They're shutters for some industrial building, along with all the accoutrement, all the adjusters, all the plates that bolt to the adjusters, and there's a bunch. If you watched the last video or the last segment in this video, depending on how I've chosen to cut it, you saw that this truck was in the yard. I walked around it. It needs to be sandblasted and painted and put in the proper colors. It's another big twin steer truck. This one's called a gin truck. The last one was a bed truck or a winch truck, and this one is a gin truck because of these big poles. These are called gin poles. And this is a winch truck, not quite as big as the last one, but it's got to be the same colors, the same blue, same white, and the same overall paint scheme. Good morning. My name is Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. and this morning I'm here at Flash Industrial Painting because yesterday I got this 2013 Mack twin steer gin style winch truck, and it's called gin because of the gin poles. These big long poles are gin poles. That's what that's whenever you hear anybody call a truck a gin truck, that's the difference between it and a winch truck. And yesterday I got it out and did some what I call selective sandblasting on it. I didn't bring you guys along for that for two reasons. It was really windy and stormy, so the camera wouldn't sit anywhere. You wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have been able to film for long anyway without the lens getting goobered up. But then also it was it's boring. Watching selective sandblasting is boring, and the reason I call it selective is because the paint job that was on here before, that still is, was really well done. Somebody sandblasted all the material, really applied good primer and paint. I almost never see that, but here it is. It's really well done. It's like whenever I get a truck in that I did 20 years ago, and it's come back to the shop because it's under new ownership and they want to change the colors or whatever, I dread those because they are a bear to get the paint off of. So when I selectively sandblasted was I did the chassis, I did problem areas that were all chipped up, like this part of the bumper on both sides. The middle here, as you can see, is not chipped up at all, and it's got a good coating on it. But then I got down in here and I just hit this quick. And the reason I hit this quick is because it was so tough that you can be there for a few seconds, enough to actually abrade it with the sandblaster. And that's the idea, is that you abrade it with that sand, and plus you don't use coarse sand, you use really fine sand. I use used sand. And that is fine enough that it just abrades it nicely. Well, of course, we'll take the stickers off and that sort of thing, but that's the whole idea. And so I took these down to bare metal. The reason I got up onto these plastic fenders is it's insane. You never sandblast on plastic, but I didn't have a choice. Somebody had painted over this type of plastic that you shouldn't paint over. And because of that, it was coming loose in all of these areas and coming loose in so many spots that the best way to deal with it initially is just to blast it out of there and blast down to where it's hanging on really well. And then I can just re-prep the whole thing and decide what to do from there. So it's unfortunate, and you shouldn't really almost ever do it, but in these circumstances I really didn't have a choice. You can't chemically strip it, you can't do much. The plastic isn't much tougher than the paint, so it's hard to differentiate the two. And you can see by the wheels here how they're partially grayed. Well, that's because I hit them with the sandblaster enough to completely abrade them, but I wasn't necessarily trying to take all the paint off because they're not a faulty paint job. And then I did the same with the chassis. In some spots, as you can see, I went ahead and took it all off in the spots where it was going to come loose easy. But in most spots, it wasn't. In most spots, it was a really tough paint job. So instead, I just got in there and abraded it with the sandblaster so I don't have to get back in there and try and scratch that stuff by hand. So that was kind of the idea. See, we got it around here. This was all bubbled up with rust. So we got all that out of there. And you might think, why didn't we just get the rest of this panel? Because it was that well done. It had taken me 45 minutes to get the rest of this panel. It was just that tough. So instead, I'll just sand back onto that and hit it with some wet sanding primer when I go to wet sand prime the other components that need it, and it'll be good to go. And like up here, you can see we did the gin poles. I did the gin poles, sandblasted them completely because they were really chewed up. And they weren't done at the same time that the truck was. They weren't done as well. So the paint came off of them pretty easy. So I just did in comparison. So I just did the entire gin poles. And then like here, I did sandblast this. I mean, I can feel it. It feels like sandpaper now. And that's what you want. So I left a perfectly good paint job on there, and then I still got my abrading done so I don't have to get up here and actually scratch all this stuff. And you can see, like, I'll have to get in here with a wire wheel, but outside of that, I got in here and got that more thoroughly because it needed it. So it was kind of a selective sort of deal. Like back here, you can see where it's not sandblasted, but I got this entire back panel because it was all chipped up and I didn't want to leave it. It was ugly. So I went ahead and took the time, and it took time. It was an hour and a half just getting this. Same with back here. You know, this is 25 minutes, 30 minutes, just getting that stupid piece. That's how tough this was. And that's not bad news. It means it's got a good paint job on it. I'm glad it wasn't chipped up everywhere though, or it'd have been a nightmare. This weld right here has a crack in it. And I see cracks a lot in stuff. And a lot of times I'll just go ahead and leave them because they don't mean that much to me. If I weld up every crack that comes in my shop, I might as well just be a professional welder because I see dozens on every project. It's steel and it gets used, and steel fatigues and cracks. And this has been heavily welded and re-cracked. And the reason that that concerns me is because this trajectory right here, we're off at a pretty good angle, almost a 45-degree angle. So when a crack like that is allowed to open, this pole bends in. And right now it's bent in too far. When you go to close this hood, this fender, which is going to be blue, hits this pole right up here in the end. And you have to actually push the fender in. So the minute we get this painted and close the hood one time, it's going to gouge the fender first thing, and the pole. So I actually have to push this up this way, weld this up when I do, and I might even put a brace underneath here on the inside to keep it from happening again. Because this truck doesn't have that many miles on it, and it's already gone through all that and then been welded and then broke the weld. So that's a design flaw, a pretty big design flaw that we should probably address before we put paint on everything. We're getting ready to pull the exhaust off here. We've already pulled the cover off of it because it's going to make it easier to get to the bolts to pull the exhaust off. And then while we have the exhaust off, I'm going to scratch it and spray paint it silver, because it's all rusted and it's going to look like garbage next to the new paint. So we'll do that before we put the cover back on and before it goes back on. And we are going to have a hoot removing that tire with a steel wheel in it. That is a huge tire. See how big that is compared to my hand? It's called a super single, and it's new. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these rams down eventually. I still need to split these poles apart, get them back out of the way so I can work on them, pull these rams down after I unmask the cylinders, pull these rams down out of the way, get that cable out of the way so I can also roll the tail roll, which I couldn't do yesterday while I was trying to sandblast. Get the cable out of the way so then we can get this set up on its end, rolled over the rams, rolled all the way down the center, off the end of the truck, and by then we'll have to have the door open too, because this thing, I mean, oh, it's going to be chaos. I'm not looking forward to it. Well, now I've mostly got this rigged back down. If you noticed before, it had that block, that big pulley hanging from the center. That's not there. There was another one down here that's not there. There's another one down here that's not there. And then there was a big one back here on the back that's not there. I took all of them down, got the cable all freed up, got these poles all freed up. There's the blocks right there. This was the big one that was hanging from the top. This was the highest one up. And then, so I've got everything here so where I can later finish prepping them and get them painted. And I've got to where I can move this tail roll finally. And now I'm getting ready to fire up the truck and string out this long cable and winch it all back in so it's out of my way. And you also notice I took the center brace off. So these poles can now be spread apart and we can do our work, and then on put together day, we'll let the whole thing down and put these gin poles into these trays. But first, see, here's both winches. This one I need to run out a bit and then spool it back in correctly. It's a mess. And this one looks like it has new cable on it, but I need to get it all wound in. But before I do that, I need to cut a big X in this back window masking, so I can pin back the four corners, so I can look out from the cab and see what I'm even doing. I won't even know which winch I'm actuating at first, or to what speed I'm doing it, or anything like that until I do that. So I need to be able to see what I'm doing from the cab. Just like that. And then when I go to put it back together, I'll just tape up both the seams and put it right back together. Well, now I'm going to fire this beast up and go ahead and get this all this cable winched back in. All right, I'm going to have to put you guys to work. I'm going to go ahead and take care of this end, and I'm going to need you guys down at the other end to watch things down there as this cable comes in. It's going to be sticking out a long way. So when you get down there, let me know, and then I'll get started at this end. Excellent. Thanks for getting that, you guys. Now I got that done and out of the way, I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is find a place for that cross member and that exhaust, because I'm going to sand and paint it too. Find a spot for all this sort of stuff, and then get these poles split apart. All right, so I got it all rigged down as much as I'm going to do it. As you can see, the gin poles are still completely up in the air, but I want them up in the air because I still need to be able to get all around them and get down in the tray that they rest in. And then on put together day, I'll just lower those rams, and when I do, these will lower right into place. But I got the center pin out and got the poles spread apart. None of it was fun or easy. And now we can go ahead and continue with this project as planned. Well, that's about all the nonsense I'm going to get involved with today. I'm going to go ahead and go eat something good and watch something good. Do something that isn't work. Catch you guys later.